There is no terrible way to win. There is only winning.
Let me drive. I will make a fool out of you.
Every one of us has to find a reason to do this. You do it because you're driven.
I was beginning to think I'd never be anything more than a piston-happy, lead-foot punk. Then this starts to happen.
Somebody put it in your mind you gotta be perfect every time out or you're a failure. Well, forget that. Just forget it.
You ready to put away your toys and grow up? Are you ready to make more money in 1 year than your father made in his whole life? Are you ready to become a real race car driver?
When I won it was probably the last time I ever felt pure victory.
Because I'm quicker than all of you.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
But hell, isn't that what we're in this for? To stare death in the face and to cheat it? Come on, there's nobility in that. It's like being knights.
No pressure, nobody breathing down my back, just driving because I left it pure.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
I just hope when you do, that I'm there to see it.
Racing. That's the name of the game, isn't it? Win or lose, put up or shut up.
Fine. Then let's race.
Hi, I'm Tom Ingham and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Jacques Villeneuve, you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Bruno Senna, you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Chris Hoy and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Landon Norris and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
You're listening to Race Day Live on Downforce UK, brought to you by Clapham North MOT, Motorsport Days Live, Stopwatch Hospitality and Trade Price Cars.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Whilton Mill. It is a very different day to what we had 24 hours ago. The clouds have come out, the rain has been present around the circuit since about 8:30 p.m. last night, and it's a very tricky day indeed with greasy, slippery, wet conditions to greet us for the season finale of the IAME classes of the Motorsport UK British Kart Championships across Mini, Junior and Senior X30 and of course IAME Cadet. Time qualifying has begun. I'm Jake Sanson, beside me is Bachini, and we're going to have some very exciting battles out on the circuit today. Time qualifying is underway for the first of our two Junior X30 sessions. Very tricky circuit this in the conditions, and to prove the point, Georgi Dimitrov has gone straight off at the first turn and struck the barrier and continued on. Despite the very slippery conditions out there, they're obviously trying to push to find the best possible lap times around the circuit, but there's a lot of damp patches on the circuit, Kai. It's going to be very tricky from this point on for the weekend.
Yeah, and the thing is, in the dry we saw a lot of people making mistakes around that corner, so especially in the wet around the first section the car will be very tail happy and it will be difficult to keep the car under control.
So with that in mind, obviously everybody's going to be very, very focused on their own particular objectives. Obviously the title fight is still technically up for grabs, although on points after his win in yesterday's race, having been awarded it post-race, Oliver Gray is technically the points leader and cannot be caught. However, obviously there is still another race to go, and you never really know what's going to happen until the final checkered flag of the season flies and all the results are made official afterwards. So it's always going to be very difficult and very open. The battle for second in the standings is still incredibly close. The first couple of flying laps are coming in now, and it's Josh McLean who's hit the top spot early doors, 53.26 for his first flying lap from Aaron J. Walker, the Dan Holland racing driver, in front of Joseph Taylor. And then it is Tom Leben, Sam Hawthorne, Aidan Neaton, Freddie Spindlow, Harvey Ryby, Max Meir, Daniel Ginchard and Sam Shaw, from Georgi Dimitrov, Alex Moody, Mackay Singh, Alex Lee, Casper Scusa, Josh Rowledge and Ben Jenkins, with no time set by Archie Walker. He may have elected to sit out of this one, obviously after a very difficult day at the office yesterday. But for Josh McLean and Aaron Walker, it's game on up front.
Yeah, it will be. They're two very quick drivers. We saw Aaron Walker dominating the field and then unfortunately picked up that penalty after the race. We did see him drive and show his raw pace, but I think Josh McLean will want to shut him down and he will want to be up at the front in this race.
So now the first flying laps really coming in as Josh McLean continues to hold the lead. There's so much sliding around the circuit. It's very, very tricky to hold the karts on the racing line. Several drivers finding through crook and through oblivion. There is very little grip to be had at all in these corners, but currently it's Josh McLean who's got a time of a 52.93. Personal bests being set though by several drivers up in that top six. Fastest of all in the first and second sectors at present is Josh McLean of the Fusion Motorsport team. They are there in first and second sectors fastest of all. The fastest driver in the third sector is actually Georgi Dimitrov, who had that trip into the barriers just at the start of our broadcast. So fortunately he's going to try and get himself back up the order relatively quickly, but with 12.72 seconds, that is a 2-second drop in the third sector alone. That just shows you how much standing water there is out on the circuit at the moment.
Yeah, you can see the little puddles around the track, and if you do catch one of those puddles, that will make a massive difference to that lap, because the standing water can slow you down in straight line speed, and it can slow down the momentum of the car, and then you have to build that momentum back up again.
So Josh McLean in front of Freddie Spindlow now, up to second place for the KR Sport team, 0.5 of a second away from McLean's time. Then Tom Leben, who's come up to third place in front of Aaron J. Walker. Then Joseph Taylor for the Strawberry Racing team. Alex Lee, Sam Hawthorne, Harvey Ryby, Casper Scusa now up into ninth place. And the new junior star, Aidan Neat, who's come up from IAME Cadet halfway through the season, is there in position as well in the top 10. And there's a second and a half between the top 10. That is massive compared to what we usually see in this category. Normally there's only about 2 or 3 tenths of a second covering the top 10 in any one category. So it's a very interesting battle for Josh McLean up front, a 52.83 at the moment, half a tenth of a second away. Spindlow, Leben, Aaron J. Walker, Joe Taylor and Casper Scusa now moving up into the top 6. Joe Taylor now goes third in front of Tom Leben. So Tom Leben still keeping a decent pace. The gap between the top 4 is a second at the moment. That shows you just how tricky it is to find the levels of grip needed to get a fast lap in around this Whilton Mill circuit. Very tricky in the wet conditions, and a very treacherous end to the season by all accounts in all 4 classes.
Yeah, there was a very treacherous end to the season, especially with yesterday people struggling in the dry. This, as we were saying, these wet conditions are definitely going to pose a challenge to a lot of drivers, and I think we will see a bit more of an action-packed racing today.
So currently it's Fusion Motorsport in front of KR, with Strawberry Racing and Mark Litchfield Racing in the top 4 teams. Josh McLean, Freddie Spindlow, Joe Taylor and Tom Leben. We might not be able to see a faster lap than a 52.8, because that's still half a second in front of Freddie Spindlow. Josh McLean's found some pace. This is going to be a bit of a lottery. As I say that, Josh Rowledge completely snams on that and gets a 52.74, 900ths of a second quicker than Josh McLean. So Georgi Dimitrov there in third from Spindlow, Taylor, Alex Lee, then Aaron J. Walker, Leben, Mir and Scusa in that top 10. So a really interesting battle so far, 900ths of a second. Josh Rowledge really wanting to do a good job here, essentially with the season coming to a close and him relatively in and out of the battle for the title fight. For Josh Rowledge, this is essentially a free test session in the wet for him. He knows that he obviously wants to finish the season on a high, but for all of the drivers, this is an opportunity to be there in wet conditions and obviously get some extra track running in. Now, who's going fastest of all in the second sector? That's Casper Scusa. So Scusa and Dimitrov are both on quick runs as McLean crosses the line to take the checkered flag. He will be second. Scusa goes fastest on a 52.41. What a lap from Casper Scusa. He really has found his feet, as Dan Ginchard goes up to 6th right at the bitter end of the session as well. That is amazing work from Casper Scusa. He finds the ultimate raw pace right at the end there, and that's a brilliant pole position for Casper.
Yeah, and Georgi Dimitrov must have made a massive mistake in the last sector, because a second off his quickest in the last sector. He was on for the fastest lap. He must be disappointed with that one. Yeah, because he ends the session 7/10 of a second away from Casper Scusa, and he would have got the pole there by at least 2 or 3 tenths. So a bit of a disappointment for Georgi Dimitrov, but for Casper Scusa, that is a fairy tale. He had a very difficult weekend. He retired from the race yesterday, and now he is there looking at pole position, certainly provisionally, for Junior X30. They have another time qualifying session to come, so it'll be about whether that session has cleared the track enough for faster laps to come in. But certainly at the moment, Casper Scusa has gone ahead of some big names. Look at who's behind him. Rowledge, McLean, Dimitrov, Spindlow, Ginchard, Taylor, Alex Lee. There's some big names in there behind him. So he's definitely taken a benefit from that. Aaron J. Walker in 9th from Max Mir. Aidan Neat is 11th from Tom Leben, way down in 12th position. Sam Hawthorne, Harvey Ryby and Mackay Singh, the Pierce Sexton Racing drivers. Alex Moody, Ben Jenkins and Sam Shaw, who didn't complete the session in the end. He only did 5 laps out on the circuit. And Archie Walker, who didn't come out at all. So hopefully we will see him out on the circuit. But it is a very interesting scenario. And for Casper Scusa, it's the perfect start to the day. Yeah, great session from Casper Scusa. He will be happy with that one. As you said, he's in front of a lot of big names. But it's unfortunate to see Sam Shaw and Archie Walker down there, because they had a difficult day yesterday, but we know they're strong on raw pace, and we know they have what it takes to be up there. Yeah, it's unfortunate, and the difficulty is you kind of have to work with what you've got now for the rest of the day, so that can be very tricky in its own right. And certainly for the big names, they're going to have to do a lot of their hard work on the track now, going wheel to wheel in very slippery conditions. The heats are going to be quite precarious with the conditions of the circuit being as they are. It's not a monsoon condition for the circuit, but what you have to bear in mind, of course, is going into last night, the rain started here
at around about 8:30 p.m. Local time. There were a couple of light drizzles before that, but the rain really came in earnest about 8:30. Was heavy for the first 2 to 3 hours, and then it just stayed constant through till about 7:45 this morning. So off the circuit, there is nothing but mud and dirt everywhere thanks to the rain laid down last night. But even off the racing line, you know, the water is not draining off the circuit in quite the way they want it to.
Yeah, I think, as you were saying, they're trying to drain the water off the track. That hasn't worked, and it has made standing water on track, which is another challenge that they have to think about. Especially, they have the slippery conditions. They also have to think about standing water. That's a lot to think about when just trying to drive the fastest lap you can.
When in the dry conditions in Junior X30, the drivers would be waiting a couple of minutes to give their tyres a breather. In the wet, no waiting around. Just get out there and set a decent lap. As Oliver Gray, Alessandro Serenetti, Marcus Littlewood, Aaron Walker, JP Slater, Tyler Reed, Darrell Taylor, Chris Harnan, Caden McQueen, Ivan Lomliev, Dan Butterworth, Sam Heading, Oscar Joyce, Aaron Reshepi, Douglas Bolger, Zach Meakin, Blake Anglis and Will Murdoch will go to battle in the second of our Junior X30 time groups. The time to beat 52.41 set by Casper Scusa. Very pleasing to be able to say that. We haven't been able to for a lot of the season. But Oliver Gray is on the verge of clinching and securing the British Kart Championship title. Won the race yesterday after a very tough battle, and now he's basically got to stay focused, stay calm, stay motivated, and not do anything silly, and he will be there in position. Looks like the only driver that's not got out onto the circuit for Junior X30 time qualifying in this session is Ivan Lomliev. Now, he had a tough day at the office yesterday as well, so I wonder if the ramifications of that have ended up coming back to affect him as well coming into today. Oliver Gray is out there on the circuit about to complete a lap. We'll see where he comes in the top 10. He's in 7th at the moment. It's Will Murdoch who sets the first lap, just for the sake of argument. And we've had an off into the first corner. Now that looks like Oscar Joyce, the premium karting driver, appears to have gone off there at the first corner. Very tricky conditions, of course, in the wet. And there's not really a lot that Oscar Joyce can do now except try and get his kart running again. But he's out of the session at the moment, and that is a big shock for Oscar Joyce. Not the way he wanted his session to begin. So he's going to try and get himself back into position once again. Hang on, is that? No, I think that's Dan Butterworth, you know. That's Dan Butterworth, the 55. It's not the 59, it's Dan Butterworth in the 55 on the gold chassis. So the privateer has ended up off into the barriers at the first corner, having not really laid down a competitive lap time. And that is disastrous for Dan Butterworth as Oliver Gray goes top of the tree. And look at that, the second session is so much faster than the first. The top 10 have already gone into the top 10 overall. So this session is going to be so much faster than the previous session. Now, what they've done in previous events is if one timed session is dramatically faster than the other when the track is drying, is they will combine the two sessions and they will put the fastest driver from one session and the fastest driver from the other on the front row of each grid and stagger it that way. So that might come into effect. So the fact that Casper Scusa's time is so much slower than the second time group may not be too much of a hindrance in the end.
I think that is more of a fair way of doing it because it puts the fastest drivers at the front. I think that's the way they should do it all the time. But yeah, the second sessions are that's a little bit of an off. I think that's Tyler Reed.
It is indeed.
Yep, and I think especially the second sessions are going to be way quicker now because the track's just drying and drying and drying. So the later the session is, the more rubber that's being put down, the drier the track's going to be.
Well, I think it's almost certainly now a consideration of an argument to now split the timed groups across from each other and have the fastest from one and the fastest from the other as the top two drivers in the session. Surely that's got to be the way they look at it, as Oliver Gray runs on a 49.54 now, so the track is drying rapidly now that the sun is coming out. Oh, you got to feel though for Dan Butterworth, the gold chassis. He's out of the session already after a trip into the barriers, and that's the difficulty in time qualifying. If you've been at that point, the kart is going to take too much damage. You're not going to go any further. And that has basically been the characteristics of Dan Butterworth's season. He's had the speed to be in the top 10 all year long, but he's had no luck at all.
Yeah, he's just been really unfortunate. You can see he's having a word with the marshals. Obviously wanted to get back on the track, but having to take the car off the track because it was in a dangerous position. But it's very unfortunate. He definitely has the raw pace. As he was saying, he was up in the top 3 for his first lap. Doesn't really show much, but I'm sure he would have been able to stay there. But it's very unfortunate that he's went out this early in the session.
So the difficulty now, of course, is that he's got to respond to that and fight back in the races themselves. Alessandro Serenetti is now on the top with a 48.81, 600s quicker than Douglas Bolger. Now come the rest of the field trying to get more time out of the karts, and it's Sam Heading who's gone to the top in front of Douglas Bolger by 100th of a second. Littlewood is now third. Great performance there from the driver, the privateer, who runs in the colours of the Spirit of Senna. Chris Harnan. Oh, we've had another off there. Is that Tyler Reid again? Now, we've certainly had an off there into the first corner. Can't quite see who that is that's ended up hitting the wall. I wonder if that's Blake Anglis, actually. So an off there in the first turn. And I think that might be Blake Anglis, who's just gone a little too far over the apron there. No, it's Will Murdoch. It's Will Murdoch in the ST Racing. So Will Murdoch with a big problem. And unfortunately, he too is going to be out of the session. At least he was able to get a 48.7 out of it. Half a second off Sam Heading. Marcus Littlewood is your leader now with a 48.04 in front of Darrell Taylor and Chris Harnan. Then it is Sam Heading in front of Caden McQueen and Alessandro Serenetti from Bolger, Walker, Reed, Anglis, Sleater and Zach Meakin, with Aaron Rashepi in 13th place in front of Will Murdoch, who is now unfortunately with a kart buried in the barriers up at Oblivion. What a shame.
The marshals are doing an amazing job, though, getting straight on the scene, recovering the car from the dangerous position, and just trying to get the car out of the way so other people can get on with their session without it hindering their times. But I think we have a fastest sector from who is that? It's Aaron Walker in the first sector, a little bit slower in the second sector. Who's that? Who's got a purple second sector? I think that's Caden McQueen. But the two drivers already looking very quick as we see Caden McQueen go to the top. Not a surprise with that absolutely blistering second sector, but as the flag goes out, whoever crosses the line now will finish the session.
Well, for those drivers who are going to have another lap to do, they are the ones with the advantage, because obviously they've got a little bit more time to play with on a drying track. And so far it's McQueen from Serenetti, Littlewood, Anglis, Harnan, Meakin, Darrell Taylor and Sam Heading, along with Douglas Bolger and Aaron Walker. They've all got an extra lap to do, as has Aaron Rashepi and Oscar Joyce. But no laps at all from Ivan Lomliev, and DNFs in the session at the first corner from Will Murdoch and Dan Butterworth means this is going to be a very interesting run across the line. Oscar Joyce could not do more than a 49.26, unfortunately, on this occasion, but it's going to be at the front end of the field where the times will tumble. McQueen was on a 47.7, Serenetti goes to a 47.57, so he goes fastest. Darrell Taylor pops into third behind Serenetti and McQueen. Littlewood in fourth place from Harnan, Walker, Meakin and Blake Anglis, with Douglas Bolger and Sam Heading. And of course this second session, oh, we had a spin after the checkered flag. Now that is one of the Coles drivers. That's got to be Chris Harnan, the Dutchman, who's overshot there on the run to the first corner. Well, gone through Crook and Oblivion, and he struck the barrier. So again, still very wet out there on the circuit. But it's Alessandro Serenetti who gets the fastest time. Now he's going to get ultimate pole position from the sessions, with this session being faster than the previous one. But as far as I can determine, they should combine the two sessions on aggregate. And so it should be Alessandro Serenetti and Casper Scusa who are going to be the fastest two drivers from the aggregate times. But it's Serenetti from Caden McQueen, Darrell Taylor, Marcus Littlewood and Chris Harnan in the top five.
I think by the time it gets to the cadets, there will be a completely dry line on track. You can see the dry line starting to form. And by the time it gets to the cadets, I think that they'll be able to go on slicks and push as hard as possible.
Yeah, we're not far away from that, to be fair. The track is draining remarkably rapidly, considering, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on, and certainly something that the senior X30 drivers are going to be mindful of as they get ready for their qualifying session, which is coming up in a couple of moments' time.
There is no terrible way to win. There is only winning.
Let me drive. I will make a fool out of you.
Every one of us has to find a reason to do this. You do it because you're driven.
I was beginning to think I'd never be anything more than a piston-happy lead-foot punk. Then this starts to happen.
Somebody put it in your mind you gotta be perfect every time out or you're a failure. Well, forget that. Just forget it.
You ready to put away your toys and grow up? Are you ready to make more money in 1 year than your father made in his whole life? Are you ready to become a real race car driver?
When I won it was probably the last time I ever felt pure victory.
Because I'm quicker than all of you.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
Oh, hell, isn't that what we're in this for? To stare death in the face and to cheat it? Come on, there's nobility in that. It's like being knights.
No pressure, nobody breathing down my back, just driving because I left it pure.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
I just hope when you do, that I'm there to see it.
Racing. That's the name of the game, isn't it? Win or lose, put up or shut up.
Fine. Then let's race.
Who Are You, the latest album. Who Are You, the latest album from Transition, the official Olympic band of Chinese Taipei. Featuring the awesome tracks Take the Night and So Far Away. And the brilliant Here I Am. Transition, the official house band for Downforce Radio. Albums available now on iTunes and online at transition.tk.
Hi, I'm Tom Ingham and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Jacques Villeneuve, you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Bruno Senna, you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Chris Hoy, and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Landon Norris, and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
You're listening to Race Day Live on Downforce UK, brought to you by Clapham North MOT, Motorsport Days Live, Stopwatch Hospitality, and Trade Price Cars.
Back into the action once again here at Whilton Mill as the Senior X30 time qualifying session kicks underway. It's Rory Hudson, Alexander Patterson, Jenson Brown and Henry Ayres, Matt Armstrong and Archie Tillett from Jack Gordon and Josh Graham, then Alex Pendlebury and Mario Zelletti, Ryan Green and Cole Kilner from Thomas Fleming and Harry Barlow, Gus Lawrence, yesterday's winner, and Callum Driscoll. So obviously the track drying out pretty quickly, but the Senior X30 drivers do have to take the air of caution around this circuit to a certain extent. Looks to me as though most of the drivers out there on track, though, are on slick tyres, and that's caused a big problem for Harry Barlow. The M Sport driver's gone wide at the first turn, got back on the circuit again, so drivers realising, well, in the fast drying nature of the conditions, slick tyres are the only option now, because there's a dry enough line to push it, but they're going to have to be very careful as they dance with that knife edge, trying to go over the limit as they try and keep the kart on the circuit. But it is very tight at the moment, that dry line.
And you can see he literally just clipped the tiniest bit of the wet patch, and that just sent the car wide, because these slicks do not like a wet patch on track. Especially with standing water, that would make a massive difference if one of the drivers on slick tyres hit a wet patch. But even just the little bit of wet on the outside line where it's not dry, that will make a massive difference to your time.
Now, you've been here in this position before. Oh, big shot. Sorry, I was going to talk to you about that, but a big shot. That's Alexander Patterson going into, I think that is Crook and Oblivion, and just overshot. Unfortunately, Alexander Patterson hitting the wet patch and pirouetting into the barriers. Kept the kart going again, but that's definitely going to hamper his progress. I was going to say, you've been here in this position before, Kai, when you're out there on a circuit that's drying and you're trying to get the most out of the kart on those slick tyres. When you travel even a millimetre, maybe even a couple of millimetres over the edge of that dry line, it must be like driving on sheet ice. The car just wants to get away from you.
Yeah, you just need to try and regain control of the car as soon as possible. Lift off the throttle, make sure you slowly turn the car in, because you don't want to yank on the steering. Just slowly push the steering in and the car will slowly but steadily regain control.
And it's a very tricky situation the drivers find themselves in at the moment. Jenson Brown has done a 47.53 to go fastest so far in front of the two Strawberry Racing drivers of Jack Gordon and Matt Armstrong. Then in is Cole Kilner for the Mick Barrett Racing team, Alex Pendlebury of Strawberry Racing and Archie Tillett of PF International. Then it's Callum Driscoll, Thomas Fleming, Gus Lawrence and Henry Ayres. And then we have Ryan Green and Alexander Patterson from Josh Graham and Mario Zelletti. Harry Barlow is 15th, Rory Hudson is 16th place. So still some times to tumble. But again, this is all about coping with the circuit as it dries out. 2 minutes 37 on the clock as across the line. Matt Armstrong goes fastest now on a 47.37, only 600ths of a second quicker than Mick Barrett Racing's Cole Kilner. Jenson Brown across the line now as well. He goes top. So Jenson Brown running. Oh, and we've had a spin. That is Callum Driscoll. Callum Driscoll has gone into the barrier there. That's a real shame for the Jade Racing driver. And was there a pirouette involved when he struck the barrier? I think he may have had a bit of a tumult there, Kai. That looked pretty nasty.
Yeah, it does look like, if you look at the side of the car, it does look like it's elevated a bit and the wheel's a bit lower than the side pod, so it does look like that chassis might have been bent in that collision with the barrier.
And obviously a lot of that energy has gone through Callum Driscoll, so he's just walked away from the kart. He's climbing over the barriers, and now it's going to be a question of just making sure he's okay. He may well get a check just to make sure, because that was looked fairly ferocious but the drivers have got to be very careful going through that first corner. And obviously yellow flags will be there at turn 1, but it's during a qualifying session. The drivers are not looking too keen to back down off the pace. The trouble is, in qualifying, you've got very little time to deal with these sorts of situations, as Gus Lawrence goes fastest now. Yesterday's race winner, Gus Lawrence, 46.82, 0.19 of a second faster than Matt Armstrong and Jensen Brown. And then it's Jack Gordon and Alex Pendlebury, the Strawberry Racing teammates from Henry Ayres and Thomas Fleming. Then Cole Kilner and Archie Tillett. Callum Driscoll is still 10th, but of course has had that shunt at the first corner now and will take no further part in the session. Then Ryan Green and Rory Hudson, Alex Patterson and Harry Barlow, Josh Graham, and the new boy from Italy, Mario Zaletti. And Thomas Fleming has come up to second. Matt Armstrong displaces him immediately, and then Jack Gordon heads through into third. But they're in the 46.8s now, so we're getting closer and closer to dry weather running pace. And for Gus Lawrence, well, this is the perfect weekend from his point of view.
Yeah, Gus must actually be loving this one, because amazing drive yesterday. He's putting on a solid performance already today. If he can finish off today, I think he'd be pretty good in the driver standings.
Yeah, he's going to be solidly in that top 5, having had a bit of a blip mid-season. He was mighty at PF International, and that's when the season really started on a good run from him. It was only really when the likes of Danny Curl and Mark Kimber started to come into the championship that at the same time he really sort of lost momentum, which is unusual because it's rare for a couple of drivers to really have that sort of effect on a particular driver's pace. They're probably unrelated. It's purely coincidental, most likely. But Gus Lawrence out in front until Jensen Brown pops up. 46.50 from Jensen Brown. And with 5 seconds on the clock, Rory Hudson comes up from dead last nearly into second place. And now Gus Lawrence goes faster still, 46.40, and he's just got time to get another one. And we've had another spin into that first corner. Now that looks to me like one of the DHRs. That's either going to be Rory Hudson or Jensen Brown. And I think that might be Jensen Brown. So over the top of the barriers. And, well, a big disaster there. Oh, no, that's Ryan Green. My apologies. It's Ryan Green who's gone off there at the first corner by the look of it. So we've had Driscoll go off there and Ryan Green now as well. So some big problems in the early stages. And the drivers come across the finish line after the checkered flag, and they've got to slow right down because of that Kart of Ryan Green's having gone off. But Gus Lawrence is going to remain at the top spot. Archie Tillett comes up to 5th in front of Cole Kilner. Fleming and Pendlebury are 3rd and 4th at the moment. Is Jensen Brown going to get past Gus Lawrence over the line? 46.40 for Lawrence. Can Jensen Brown get there? No, he cannot. So Jensen Brown, actually, was that Jensen Brown who went? It was Jensen Brown who went off at the first corner. My apologies. So Jensen Brown went off there at the first corner, and that's robbed him of a chance of pole position. He still has second by a 10th, but he could have got the pole away from Gus Lawrence. It's Jensen Brown who dropped it at turn 1.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that these stuff happens, but you've got to give credit to the drivers that do hit the barriers, because they're pushing all the way to the limit and running the risk that they have to run. But it's just really unfortunate. He got thrown out of the car when he hit the barriers, but it's really unfortunate of what happened to Jensen Brown when he hit the barriers. Currently, he was in second place. He was challenging for that pole position, but unfortunately wasn't able to get it.
So very dramatic, but Gus Lawrence has the pole position from Jensen Brown, who remains in second place. But the biggest problem for Jensen now is that he's actually going to struggle to get the kart ready and prepared for the first heat. Despite getting second place, he's going to really struggle to get himself into position. Thomas Fleming in 3rd, then Alex Pendlebury from Archie Tillett and Cole Kilner, Rory Hudson and Jack Gordon, then Matt Armstrong and Henry Ayres, Alexander Patterson, Callum Driscoll, Josh Graham and Ryan Green, then Harry Barlow and Mario Zaletti. So a very tough day at the office so far in Senior X30 for Jensen Brown. Callum Driscoll in particular, and Josh Graham and Ryan Green had difficulties there as well. So we're going to head into this second practice session. Air temperature 18 degrees, so it's actually a little warmer than it was yesterday. And the track is drying fairly rapidly, but there's still some pretty solid wet patches around the circuit, including up towards Ashby, through Inkermans, and certainly here at Crook and Oblivion through the first couple of corners, as we've seen several drivers drop it on the way around the outside. So a very treacherous start to the day for several drivers. There is Jensen Brown and Callum Driscoll both walking away. They walk along the circuit itself to get back as it's the fastest way, but very disgruntled drivers both going off in the drizzly conditions around the outside of Oblivion, and obviously striking the barriers quite hard in both cases. But it looks like both drivers are okay. Initially just a little bit of a shock to the system, but in essence it looks as if the drivers are okay. They're certainly walking in of their own accord, which is always a positive. But it's definitely going to be a very tough day at the office, the last round of the IAME British Kart Championships season. And I have to say, it's been incredibly tough over the course of the morning thus far. The second session is going to see the championship contenders going head-to-head. Thomas Turner and Danny Curl will battle for the title and battle for pole position in this qualifying session. Morgan Porter, Oliver Hodgson, Derek Morgan, Rufus Hunt, Eduardo Cosatang, Abigail Ross, Alexander Wang and Matthew Hudson, and then Lewis Gilbert, Ben Hodge, Reese Ujijima, Tom Nippers, Caleb Marshall, and of course, as we mentioned, Danny Curl in there as well. So it'll be a very interesting one. 46.40 is the time for Gus Lawrence to beat, and we'll see some very exciting battles from them as the battle continues. But we will see some amazing quality runs from the Senior X30 drivers. Some solid performances and some really great efforts from the drivers out there thus far. Green light goes on, and with it being wet weather conditions into drying conditions, they're not going to wait around. They all head straight out onto the circuit in the hope that their lap time is going to be the one for pole position. 46.40 is the lap at the moment. Now, if the lap times are fairly similar, then they will stagger them as they normally do, but obviously, I think from the Junior X30 sessions, they will have to use an aggregate. But the drivers are obviously now in position out on the circuit, and the competitors running out. Thomas Turner, Morgan Porter, Oliver Hodgson, Derek Morgan, Rufus Hunt, Eduardo Cosatang, Abigail Ross, Alexander Wang, Matthew Hudson, Lewis Gilbert, Ben Hodge, Reese Ujijima, Tom Nippers, Caleb Marshall, and Danny Curl. And this is going to be the toughest pole position of the season for them to battle for, because they know that at the end of this weekend, one of these drivers in the grid, Thomas Turner or Danny Curl, is going to emerge as the British Kart Championship title winner. It's not done yet in Senior X30 by a long, long shot, and it is going to go right down to the wire on dropped scores. So Danny Curl gets the fastest lap in of the drivers going around for the first time, just for the record. It will not be anywhere near the pole time that they set. They're still 5.5 seconds away from that set by Gus Lawrence in the previous session. So there's still a long, long way to go. But Danny Curl in front of Eduardo Cosatang, Oliver Hodgson and Reese Ujijima. Then it is Matthew Hudson from Morgan Porter, Thomas Turner, Caleb Marshall, Wang, Nippers, Morgan, Hunt, Ross, Gilbert and Hodge. And that is basically the first lap out of the pits. Fastest in the first sector though so far. No major surprises. Thomas Turner. I think Danny Curl is there with Oliver Hodgson as the next man in. So some very exciting battles for the drivers as they continue their way forward. But we will continue to see some absolutely astonishing times tumble as Hodgson comes up to the top from Turner, Curl, Wang, Morgan, Caleb Marshall's displaced, Porter's come through to third, then Hudson comes through to third in front of Danny Curl and Morgan Porter. Alex Wang in sixth from Marshall. Lewis Gilbert comes up to sixth place now, and also up the order comes Ben Hodge. So Ben Hodge gets himself into the top 10. Very close at the front end of the field still. The likes of Morgan, Cosatang, Ross, Hunt, Ujijima and Nippers still needing to find ultimate pace. Fastest of all in the first sector though is Thomas Turner on a 15.44. No one else can get really near to that. Only Oliver Hodgson on a 15.52 is comparable. So a very exciting battle so far in Senior X30. These times are about to tumble as Danny Curl goes fastest of all in the second split. Very close in Senior X30 so far.
Yeah, it's very close between these drivers. You can see Oliver Hodgson up at the top. We know he's a quick driver and he will try to get up at the top. Unfortunately unable to do it yesterday, but will he be able to pull it off today? It will be a difficult one because he has Gus Lawrence, who's really quick, currently on pole. Oliver Hodgson only sitting 7th in the quali standings right now, though.
They have set the same time, Hodgson and Turner. Look at that, 46.63 to the 100th of a second. They are dead level for the fastest time. Danny Curl in third from Alexander Wang, the Singaporean, going very well for Mick Barrett Racing. They've just started to edge themselves into the top 10. Hodgson and Turner have exactly the same time, and also the same time as Cole Kilner to the 100th of a second. 46.63 for all of them. And that's 0.2 of a second away from the pace set by Gus Lawrence in the earlier qualifying session. So we could still see that dry out quickly. Thomas Turner on a 46.54 now. Danny Curl on a 46.56. Very close. Marshall up to third. And then in fourth place we've got Hodgson, Porter, Wang, Morgan, Cosatang, Reese Ujijima, now displaced by Lewis Gilbert, who comes back into ninth position again. And then Nippers in 11th from Ross, Hudson, Hodge and Rufus Hunt. So Thomas Turner doing a fantastic job of holding this pace up front, and 4 of the drivers are in the top 10 overall. So I think this one is going to be a very comparable terms of pace. Those rain clouds are still overhead though, so if they break again, we are in for a very interesting and strange day at the office. So Thomas Turner from Danny Curl Caleb Marshall, Oliver Hodgson, then Porter, Wang, Morgan, Cosseteng, Gilbert and Ushijima. And as they come through, Turner's looking for more than 4th overall. Across the line goes Hodgson, he goes 2nd overall. Danny Curl goes fastest overall, a 46.32 from the world champion from 2017. Danny Curl goes up to the top. Hodgson in 2nd from Turner. Ushijima now is 4th place. Great lap from him. Alexander Wang in 5th from Caleb Marshall and Morgan Porter. Derek Morgan, Lewis Gilbert and Matthew Hudson in the mix there as well. About a second between them all. But Danny Curl means business. He's out there to prove so.
Yeah, Danny Curl, we know he's very quick, and he has knocked Gus Lawrence off of the pole position right now. You can see that he's quickest, and I think you can see from the clouds that it is going to be breaking in and out today. The rain's going to be on and off, and I think that will be one of the challenges for the drivers.
Yeah, Danny Curl's going to find it very interesting coming into the first Senior X30 heat of the day. They continue their battle across the line. Danny Curl goes back to the top, having Turner had displaced him, but Danny Curl gets a 46.12 now. And with a minute to go, they're still going to have a couple of flying laps out of it. Matthew Hudson comes up to 5th behind Reese Ushijima, who gets another solid lap in, a 46.43 from him now, just 0.06 of a second behind Oliver Hodgson. So it's Curl, Turner, Hodgson. Gus Lawrence is still 4th overall, a whisker in front of Reese Ushijima and Matthew Hudson. Ushijima is going to be delighted with this. Great way to end his season. Gilbert's in 6th overall now. That puts him 9th overall in the official standings. Same time as Pendlebury, but his 2nd fastest lap is slightly quicker than that of Pendlebury's, even with 30 seconds to go in the session. The drivers will come through this time by. More improvements on the way. More shuffling of the deck perhaps. 46.12 for Danny Curl doesn't change. Derek Morgan in 6th position. Morgan Porter now displaces him, comes up to that top 6.
Yeah, and I think we do have a bit of an insight, and it looks like it is drizzling outside with rain. You were saying that it's going to be on and off, and it does look like it's drizzling with a bit of rain, and that will pose a different challenge on the slicks. Will the drivers be able to keep it together before they get to the pits?
Yeah, it's going to be a very tricky end to the session. The checkered flag is out there now, looking for improvements, not in the top 5. They've all had a bit of a tricky first sector. Others are getting improvements, though. Porter, Gilbert, Wang, Nippers, Cosseteng, and also Rufus Hunt. They've all made gains in their first sector. Personal bests from Derek Morgan and Alexander Wang in the second split across the line, and it's Curl, Turner and Hodgson. They do not improve their times as they come across the line. Morgan Porter does, though. He comes up to 4th place on a 46.40. That's the same time as Gus Lawrence, but his 2nd fastest lap is clearly quicker than that of Gus Lawrence's. And as they come through, it's Curl, Turner, Hodgson, Porter, Ushijima and Hudson from this group. And then it's Alexander Wang in front of Lewis Gilbert, Derek Morgan and Caleb Marshall in the top 10.
We were expecting Gus Lawrence on pole, but he's down in 5th position. All 4 drivers in the top 4 of this session are in front of Morgan and Gus Lawrence, and that will make a massive difference in the standings. We were expecting Gus Lawrence to dominate again today in qualifying, set the fastest time again, but no, Danny Curl, Thomas Turner, Oliver Hodgson and Morgan Porter have shown that they will pose a challenge today.
It's definitely going to be very, very close. The wet weather conditions are obviously going to become a factor. IAME Cadet is up next as well, so we will see some fantastic battles in the IAME Cadet session very shortly indeed, as the battle is going to be raging once they come out onto the circuit for their timed qualifying session.
There is no terrible way to win. There is only winning.
Let me drive. I will make a fool out of you.
Every one of us has to find a reason to do this. You do it because you're driven.
I was beginning to think I'd never be anything more than a piston-happy lead-foot punk. Then this starts to happen.
Somebody put it in your mind you gotta be perfect every time out or you're a failure. Well, forget that. Just forget it.
You ready to put away your toys and grow up? Are you ready to make more money in 1 year than your father made in his whole life? Are you ready to become a real race car driver?
When I won it was probably the last time I ever felt pure victory.
Because I'm quicker than all of you.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
But hell, isn't that what we're in this for? To stare death in the face and to cheat it? Come on, there's nobility in that. It's like being knights.
No pressure, nobody breathing down my back, just driving because I left it pure.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
I just hope when you do, that I'm there to see it.
Racing. That's the name of the game, isn't it? Win or lose, put up a show.
Fine. Then let's race.
That we're times that we trusted and got burned. We get back up on our feet again. Learn my lessons till my fingers bleed, but it's worth it when we take the stage. Let me hear you make some noise. All we have is this moment now. Come on, let's take the night while we have it. Nothing more left to lose. Let's take the chance while we got it. Nothing more left to lose. Let's take the night while we have it. Nothing more left to lose. Let's take the chance while we got it. Nothing more left to lose. Come on, let's take the night while we have it. Nothing more left to lose. Let's take the chance while we got it. Nothing more left to lose.
You're listening to Race Day Live on Downforce UK, brought to you by Clapham North MOT, Motorsport Days Live, Stopwatch Hospitality, and Trade Price Cars.
Back into the action once again here at Whilton Mill for the Motorsport UK British Kart Championship season finale, and it is the IAME cadets who are out on circuit for their time qualifying session in tricky wet conditions again now, as the rain has come down, but it's not particularly heavy, so it's that biting point that racing drivers can't stand between wet and dry. It's neither at the moment, but it's incredibly greasy, and that means that this is going to appeal to the drivers who have got the most exceptional ability in changeable conditions, and that's where we're going to see some really star efforts this particular weekend. Sonny Smith has banged in a 58.63 immediately out of the blocks, and that's a full second quicker than Kia Nakamura-Berta and Archie Clark. Macaulay Bishop is there in fourth place in front of Dan Sofroneau and Nathan Ty. Will Knight, Cahal Clark, Alex O'Grady and Ethan Jeff Hall. We've got a spin in the first corner. Now that looks to me like it might well be Jack Mowat, who has had an incident there, the privateer going off. He's managed to get the kart going again though. Pretty much everybody so far struggling in these greasy conditions, but there are still drivers pushing very hard, and of course this IAME cadet grid split into two groups for time qualifying, so the second group may find it easier to cope with than the first, but Sonny Smith and Kia Nakamura-Berta showing the same sort of pace they had yesterday.
Yeah, you can see that Sonny Smith, he's very good in the wet, and obviously he's came back for the final round to prove what he has. We know that he's very quick in the wet. Carl Clark, where did he come from? But as I was saying, Sonny Swift goes quickest again. We know that.
Oh, we've got all sorts of karts going off at the first corner. There's no grip at all, and drivers are going off. There's left, right and centre. There's about 4 or 5 of them that have gone off there in the first corner. 2 of them have got going again. That looks to me like it might be Ethan Jeff Hall. Sonny Smith is in there as well, and I think that's one of the PMRs, so that's got to be Joe Katzentonis. Or either that or it is Will Antrobus, but certainly 2 or 3 drivers have gone off there in the first corner. And it's a bit of a nasty one with drivers sliding around all over the shop, goodness me. So a couple of drivers there into the barriers. Is it going to be full course yellows around the circuit at this point, because we've got 3 drivers there in at the first corner. They just slid off, no grip. And obviously drivers trying to second guess their tyre choices. But it wasn't particularly easy to call going in, and it's red flags. So that is an understandable situation, really. Red flags under the circumstances, the right call, as they check the situation for Sonny Smith, who has just set the fastest lap in qualifying, 55.09, and he went off there at the first corner. So very tricky conditions, and well, just as well really that the red flag came when it did, because that was a very precarious situation.
Yeah, it was 5 karts into the barrier at once, and then Joseph Katzentonis spun in as well. You can see that the grip levels, they seriously weren't expecting it to be that slippy, but it looks like all the drivers are okay. They're all out of the kart and they're all standing up, but will the karts be okay? That'll be the question.
Yeah, they've obviously got the first heat to prepare for, although the red flags have come out. Basically, they have done so for safety reasons. A couple of drivers there still off at that first corner. 3 of the 5 that went off have managed to get going again. And the 2 that are there, it's not Ethan Jeff Hall that went off, it's actually his teammate, the Romanian Dan Sofronea, who went off there at the first corner. So Dan Sofronea and Sonny Smith going off together. Joe Katsantonis has gone off there as well. So 3 drivers in total off the circuit. They're now clearing the wreckage. It looks as though a medical check is just going to be given for safety protocol. They have to follow the correct procedures. Sonny Smith is actually up and about. I should point that out to you. He is up, but obviously because of the severity of him hitting the barrier, they just want to be safe and they want to go through safety protocols, so the medical team will just give him a check over. But as it stands at the moment, with 3 minutes to go in time qualifying, Sonny Smith is currently the fastest driver out there by 0.6 of a second to Kian Nakamura-Berta and Archie Clark. Ethan Jeff Hall and Cahal Clark from Sofronea, O'Grady, Zach Knight and Macaulay Bishop. Then Katsantonis, Sebastian Mins, Nathan Ty, Will Knight, Fraser Anderson, Will Antrobus, Ben Smith and Jack Mowat. And that is the way things currently stand. We will wait for confirmation as to what happens next, but there is no point to speculate on that. So we will take a breather at this point and allow the safety teams to do their job. It's been an interesting start to the day, but with the weather conditions deteriorating, it could continue to be a very interesting one here at Whilton Mill.
If you want me, come and find me. I'm tired of running, here I am. If you want me, come and find me. I'm tired of running, here I am. If you want me, come and find me. I'm tired of running, here I am. And there's nothing more than this that I could give. Here I am. I don't see no justice in this city. I can feel the darkness all around, but you don't even know what I've been through. I made it here somehow, so I can't let it go. Gotta make it right, not gonna live it twice. Gotta get up off the floor. Gotta live this life, gotta fight this fight. Gonna stand for something more. If you want me, come find me. I'm tired of running, here I am. If you want me, come find me. I'm tired of running, here I am. If you want me, come find me. I'm tired of running, here I am. And there's nothing more than this that I could give. Here I can see you and the life that you've been living. They wanted to beat you to the ground, but you don't seem to know when to give in. You made it here somehow, and you're not letting go. Gotta make it right, not gonna live it twice. Gotta get up off the floor. Gotta live this life, gotta fight this fight. Gonna stand for something more. If you want me, come find me. I'm tired of running, here I am. If you want me, come find me. I'm tired of running, here I am. If you want me, come find me. I'm tired of running, here I am. And there's nothing more than this that I could give.
Hi, I'm Tom Ingham and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Jacques Villeneuve. You're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Bruno Senna. You're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Chris Hoy, and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Landon Norris, and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
You're listening to Race Day Live on Downforce UK, brought to you by Clapham North MOT, Motorsport Days Live, Stopwatch Hospitality, and Trade Price Cars. So the session...
has once again been restarted here in IAME Cadet as we battle away for the last 2 minutes without the drivers that were in the barriers in that previous part of the incident. Dan Sofronea, Sonny Smith and Joe Katsantonis. Of course, Sonny Smith currently in pole position for the races later today, but obviously with that red flag due to the incident at the first corner, the qualifying session resumes with just the remaining minutes to go. There's 1:46 left of time qualifying now. So it's up to the likes of Nakamura Roberta, Archie Clark, Ethan Jeff Hall and Cahal Clark in the current pace they're in to try and gain ground on Sonny Smith's time. Actually, a 55.09 is going to be tough for them to beat. So even though he's had that incident up at the first corner, he may not be beaten in this time session.
Yeah, he may not be beaten, but that does give the mechanics a lot of work on the car. They need to check over every part of the car, check there's no damage, check it hasn't been bent or anything like that. But he may still get the fastest time. But will he be able to make it out for Heat 1?
Yeah, that's going to be the difficulty with damage to the car. That's really where it's going to be the most difficult. So we will see what happens over the course of the session, of course. But obviously a very, very tight battle for all of the drivers in front of them. They will know exactly how much there is to do. And plenty of great battles coming in. So Kia Nakamura Berta is faster in the first sector this time by. They're struggling for pace now, and I think it's because there's more rain on the circuit. There's more rain coming down on the circuit, and that is obviously going to curtail any improvements from the drivers. Only Alex O'Grady and Nathan Ty are making improvements to their lap. In fact, Will Antrobus is as well, actually. But for everybody else, they are nowhere near the 18.44 first sector time that was set by Sonny Smith. So with the rain coming down, Sonny Smith has been given the best card in Monopoly, hasn't he? He's been given the get-out-of-jail-free card, because now he's basically going to be on pole position. I don't think anybody's going to beat him now as they come through. Yeah, the times are in the 58s, the 57s, 56s even, so that's nowhere near the time set by Sonny Smith of a 55.09. So effectively, nobody's going to get another decent lap in. It's going to be Sonny Smith who remains in pole position. Nobody can beat him now. Checkered flag is out, and they're not going fast enough to cope with that sort of pace.
Yeah, we were saying that Sonny Smith might get pole position. That has happened, but will the other session beat him? I don't think so, because you were saying that there's been more rain coming down, and they're up to like a second, 2 seconds slower. And that's a massive difference.
Certainly is. I'm not entirely sure they're going to get the sort of pace they wanted out of it. And obviously with these 2 sessions to go, the checkered flag is out on circuit. Nobody has crossed the line as yet, but if it stays like this, then it's going to be Sonny Smith in pole position from Kia Nakamura Roberta and Archie Clark. Across the line comes Macaulay Bishop. He does not improve, nor does anyone else, because the weather having deteriorated and the rain coming down again, they just can't get an advantage on these tyres. So that's it. It's a stalemate as far as the qualifying is concerned. So despite his big accident at the first corner, Sonny Smith remains at the top of the timesheets in pole position from Kia Nakamura Roberta and Archie Clark. Ethan Jeff Hall is 4th from Cahal Clark. Dan Sofronea, despite his crash, is in 6th from Alex O'Grady and Zach Knight. Macaulay Bishop is 9th, and despite his crash, Joe Katsantonis is 10th in front of Sebastian Mins, Nathan Ty, Will Knight, Fraser Anderson, Ben Smith, Will Antrobus and Jack Mower. And just goes to show you, the second that rain came in, there was never going to be an improvement in the times. But the likes of Sonny Smith, Dan Sofronea and Joe Katsantonis are not only lucky to be relatively unhurt, but they are also relatively lucky to still be in the top 10 from that group.
I'm sorry, but that's an absolutely amazing qualifying session from Daniel Sofronea.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was helped by the others going slower. He has the likes of Zach Knight, Macaulay Bishop, Joe Katsantonis, Nathan Ty, loads of quicker drivers behind him, but he must be happy with that result right now.
Yeah, he'll look at the timesheets and go, I had a massive shunt. That should have been the worst session of my season, but he's come through in the top 6. So again, he's got away with that one. In IAME Cadets' second time qualifying group, we're going to see Harry Junior Burgoyne, Maximus Hall, Vinnie Phillips and Brandon Carr battle with the new points leader, Harley Keeble. And then, of course, Mason Rudman, George Edgar, Sky Parker and Ella Stevens from Lewis Bird, Roman Kamyab, Eden Spanswick, Kian Geraghty, Joey Brown and Lewis Werrell, who will head out onto the circuit for their time qualifying. It started already, so obviously the conditions were decent enough to get them out there. Now, I have a feeling that with the rain starting to come down again on the circuit, this is going to be a similar situation to what we may well see from the juniors, with two different types of lap across the two sessions. These lap times would be, if the rain continues to come down as it is, marginally slower, well, certainly a big margin, than the previous group, which means that hopefully they will stagger the two groups to give this group of drivers still a reasonable chance of a decent starting position. But it is tricky out there, and the drivers are coping with the conditions very well as a result. But this is going to come down to the drivers, who are very good in mixed conditions and certainly very good initially in the wet.
Yeah, it will come down to the drivers which are quicker in the wet. For example, you have Maximus Hall, Vinnie Phillips, Harley Keeble, Brandon Carr. Very good names in the wet. So is Harry Junior Burgoyne. You can't forget about him. Lewis Werrell. He's been quite good in the wet so far this season. We saw he done very well at PF International when it was wet for one of the quali sessions. He put it on pole position. So he must have some confidence coming into this round.
So the first laps are coming in, and they're in the 59s initially, so it looks to me like the pace may actually be fairly similar. I think it was only a brief shower around the circuit, nothing particularly major, so the drivers will continue to find their way around the circuit. But it's Eden Spanswick fastest of all, having done a lap in 59.06. Lewis Bird is currently second for Maximus Hall and Ellie Stevens. The big guns have not really shown their true credentials yet. Fastest of all in the first sector is Maximus Hall, the Gladiator, running well there in third position at the moment. Eden Spanswick, though, still fastest up at the front end of the field. And now Vinnie Phillips has gone to the top on a 58.31, so the time is definitely coming down. It's going to be a tough one all the way through, but they are starting to get to where they need to be in terms of raw pace now, so we're definitely heading in the right direction.
Yep, but Eden Spanswick gets an even quicker time, which is a 56.8. And you can tell they're already getting closer and closer to these times. It'll be close watching Vinnie Phillips. He's got the fastest sector one. What will he be able to do on the rest of the lap though?
So the battle is tight. Harley Keeble goes to the front, 0.18 in front of teammate Brandon Carr. And that's Keeble 8th overall, so maybe the pace is going to be comparable to that of the earlier session. Ella Stevens now goes fastest, and that time's good enough for 5th overall, so I think the times are going to be staggered. Lewis Bird has gone into second place. Great lap from Lewis Bird, the ST Racing driver, has done a 56.57. Vinnie Phillips goes top, and that's second overall immediately, a 55.43, so the circuit does have enough grip in it to compare to the lap time set by Sonny Smith. So that has got to be the battle as Ella Stevens goes second. Oh, and into the barriers, going off at the first corner there. Now that looks to me like Joey Brown has gone off there in the first corner, and he's hit the barriers. So Jordan Brown having an incident. Joey Brown, I think that is, having an incident. Either that or it's Eden Spanswick, but that looks to me like Joey Brown from a distance. So hopefully he's going to be okay. The marshals are running to the scene just to make sure he's okay. Across the line, Harry Junior Burgoyne gets a 55.40 to complete the session. Yellow flags, of course, in the first corner as the drivers are getting away from the scene. But obviously the youngsters want to get through in relative condition. Ella Stevens spins into the first corner, just tripped the wet line there, and fortunately nudges the barrier but doesn't do too much damage to either her or anyone around, as Ella Stevens has bagged in a 55.17 and Vinnie Phillips has done a 54.87. That's the pole position time right there from Vinnie Phillips.
Wow, that's a really quick lap time, and he can still improve in that third sector by a couple of tenths, and if he can do that, he'll be on pole by absolutely miles.
Well, absolutely. He currently has the fastest third sector of anybody, and that wasn't on his best lap. So Vinnie Phillips definitely has the time to make gains and improvement. Ella Stevens still second from Harry Junior Burgoyne, and Lewis Bird really impressed with young Lewis. He's done a great job. By the way, the cart has already been cleared away from the first corner, so there shouldn't be any issues in terms of the first corner misdemeanors, so that won't be a massive problem. Then it is Harley Keeble in 5th behind Lewis Bird, then George Edgar, Kian Geraghty, Roman Kamyab and Brandon Carr, then Lewis Werrell and Eden Spanswick from Joey Brown and Maximus Hall, Sky Parker and Mason Rudman, who has not gone out onto the circuit by the look of it. So Ella Stevens is now going to get her next flying lap in after her spin at the first corner. But Vinnie Phillips currently has the pace and is looking very, very strong from the front.
Yeah, he's looking very strong right now. Pole yesterday, but will it be pole today with a minute remaining? Still has 2 more laps. Let's see what he's able to do.
Yeah, there's going to be a few drivers bidding for that. Ellis Stevens has done a 19.12 in the first sector, so that off might have damaged her confidence a little bit. Either that or the circuit has started to slow up again. But the driver's going through the first corner relatively quickly. Sky Parker just running through there on a 19.74 for the first sector. Still her learning year, of course, in the championship. So a lot of drivers still trying to make some gains. Looks like one of the cameras is being replaced there, the monitoring cameras. That is David Manchester bringing a couple of the cameras back in, so they look like they're doing a changeover. Crosses the circuit in good time for the IAME classes to go through. So Vinnie Phillips, Ella Stevens, Harry Junior Burgoyne is in the mix there as well. Still in third place. Vinnie Phillips doesn't improve though, does a 56.83. So has the rain come back again, I wonder? That could be a bit of an issue, as obviously the drivers have now got to live with the laps they've got. Time runs down to 0, so nobody can start another lap. They've got to finish the one they're currently on, and that will be where we're at, and nobody is making a gain except for Sky Parker. So I think Vinnie Phillips has got the ultimate lap from Sonny Smith, Ella Stevens and Harry Junior Burgoyne as they come through, and the pace has gone. So it looks to me as though either the tyres are too worn, or of course the rain has come back in places, and that has really slowed down the pace.
Looks like Maximus Hall is really struggling in these conditions. Not normally where you'd see Maximus Hall down in 13th position, and he crosses the line in 13th. He won't be happy with that qualifying. Something's got to be wrong there.
Yeah, he's done a 57.40, which is not the sort of pace we're used to seeing even in the wet conditions from him. Nobody improving then on their final time lap of the session. Vinnie Phillips actually running with Ella Stevens, and the overall top 10 is fantastic. We've got Vinnie Phillips up at the top. Sonny Smith is currently second. Ella Stevens third from Harry Junior Burgoyne. Lewis Bird has done a fantastic job in fifth overall in front of Kia Nakamura-Roberto from the previous session. Then Harley Keeble, Archie Clark, Ethan Jeff Hall. And in the top 10 for the first time, sixth in this time group, little George Edgar. What an amazing performance from him in 10th overall. That's great.
That's amazing. And he's front of, in the names of Brandon Carr, Lewis Werrell, Maximus Hall, all in the top 10 for a seeded number. George Edgar goes out there to show what he can do.
I think Jessica and the entire Edgar family are going to be very happy for him. What a little tycoon he's become this weekend. George Edgar charging his way forward into the top 6, snatching a top 10 place in the overall rankings. So behind Phillips, Stevens, Burgoyne, Bird, Keeble and Edgar in this session, we've got Kian Geraghty in 7th from Roman Kamyab, then Brandon Carr and Lewis Werrell, Eden Spanswick and Joey Brown, Maximus Hall, Sky Parker, and the man who set no time at all, Mason Rudman. So a very interesting challenge in the battle from the drivers expected. Just one more timed qualifying session to go, and that comes in the shape of Mini X30.
There is no terrible way to win. There is only winning.
Let me drive. I will make a fool out of you.
Every one of us has to find a reason to do this. You do it because you're driven.
I was beginning to think I'd never be anything more than a piston-happy, lead-foot punk. Then this starts to happen.
Somebody put it in your mind you gotta be perfect every time out or you're a failure. Well, forget that. Just forget it.
You ready to put away your toys and grow up? Are you ready to make more money in 1 year than your father made in his whole life? Are you ready to become a real race car driver?
When I won it was probably the last time I ever felt pure victory.
Because I'm quicker than all of you.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
But hell, isn't that what we're in this for? To stare death in the face and to cheat it? Come on, there's nobility in that. It's like being knights.
No pressure, nobody breathing down my back, just driving because I left it pure.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing is important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
I just hope when you do, that I'm there to see it.
Racing. That's the name of the game, isn't it? Win or lose, put up a show.
Fine. Then let's race.
Hi, I'm Tom Ingham and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Jacques Villeneuve. You're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Bruno Senna. You're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Chris Hoy, and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Landon Norris, and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
You're listening to Race Day Live on Downforce UK, brought to you by Clapham North MOT, Motorsport Days Live, Stopwatch Hospitality, and Trade Price Cars.
back into the action once again, this time the last time qualifying session of the season, never mind the weekend, and it is Mini X30. The drivers out there to get themselves ready for the last heats of the year, and it's Evan Brown, Jessica Edgar, Alfie Baxter Davies, Ashton Parsons, Luke Watts, Olivier Algieri, Ed Pearson, Gabriel Stilp, Aidan Lyne, Theo McCurris and Bart Harrison. Notable by his absence, though, out on the circuit at the moment is the GP plate Oliver Greenall. I'm fairly sure, having done the maths, they feel that his victory yesterday may have given him the points title, so they may have elected, like some of the drivers did at the Rotax weekend 2 weeks ago at Forest Edge, to not do the races here in this particular day's action.
I think quite a few people have went home. Don't know why, but we've seen quite a few people that haven't been out on track, which are very big names. We know there was a bit of a problem yesterday with the penalty system. We had a couple of people getting a bit angry about it, but I wouldn't see a reason to go home about it because there's still one more day's racing and that can all change.
Well, Greenall, I think, is playing the safety card here, as a few drivers did. We saw at Rotax 2 weeks ago, Kai Hunter didn't race at all, and then Michael Cheek and Archie Kitching, once they won the first race, once they won the title in the first race, decided not to do the second. So that's probably just a caution in order, from Greenall's point of view, to just sit and watch and keep himself to himself on the sidelines. He will, of course, watch the action from the sidelines still, because he has a trophy to collect at the end of the day from yesterday's win, of course. Luke Watts is currently fastest on the first flying lap around the circuit at 49.69, and then it's Bart Harrison from Ed Pearson, Ian Aguilera and Jessica Edgar from Aidan Lyne and Theo McCurris, then Alfie Baxter Davies and Evan Brown, Ashton Parsons, Olivier Algieri and Gabriel Stilp at the present moment in time. 5 seconds between them, so obviously there is definitely more time to come in the session as drivers start to find their feet. But with 3.5 minutes of the time qualifying session, there is very little to do. Gabriel Stilp having all sorts of difficulties at the moment. A 16.66 for the first sector. That's a full 0.6 of a second off the pace. Considering he was pole position yesterday, he's really not finding it as easy in these greasy conditions. Whoa, big slide into the first corner. I think that was Ian Aguilera going sideways, and one of the Croc Promotions, I think that was Gabriel Stilp. Oh, it was Olivier, actually. Olivier Algieri. He's just gone fourth, running wide there, still through Crook and Oblivion. So it's still very greasy, very tricky round there.
Yeah, you can see lots of people struggling with the conditions. Just Tokyo drifting around that corner, especially Olivier Algieri nearly catching the mud. But you can see Jessica Edgar trying to get the toe from the driver in front. Don't know who that is. I think it might be Ed Pearson in the Coles Kart. But trying to get the toe, we should be able to pick it up properly though. Ed Pearson does get the fastest sector too. What will Jessica be able to do today? She was quite quick yesterday. She was battling with Gabriel Stilp. But what will Gabriel Stilp and Jessica Edgar be able to do in these conditions?
Well, I think Jessica Edgar's definitely a shoe-in for second in the driver's standings, the way it currently stands, and she's got a good opportunity to seal that deal. Aidan Lyne is now the fastest driver out there, 49.02, 1/100th of a second quicker than both his teammate Luke Watts and Coles Racing's Edward Pearson. Then it is Theo McCurris in fourth, in front of Harrison, Algieri and Edgar, and then Aguilera, Baxter Davies, Gabriel Stilp, Evan Brown and Ashton Parsons, and then the man who's set no time, Oliver Greenall, who looks likely to finish the season on the sidelines. But Aidan Lyne has a golden opportunity here. He was ridiculously fast at Three Sisters. Now he's got a chance maybe to snatch the pole position in Mini X30 here at Whilton Mill.
Yeah, Aidan Lyne's got the fastest sector 1 again, and so does Luke Watts have the fastest sector 2. It's very close, and that was an absolute rapid sector 2 by Luke Watts. 0.3 quicker than anyone else. Oh, 1/10 quicker than Jessica.
Oh, we've had enough in the first corner.
Bart Harrison. I think that's Bart Harrison.
I think it is Bart Harrison, yes. He's had a trip into the barriers there at the first turn. He's got the kart going again, and you're right, it was Harrison who went off there. So he's managed to get it going, but that's definitely going to hamper his progress in the remainder of the session. 1:15 left on the clock. Luke Watts in front of Jessica Edgar and Aidan Lyne. Then Pearson, McCurris, Stilp, Baxter Davies, Harrison, Aguilera and Algieri. And then we've got Brown and Parsons still squabbling at the back. A warning flag goes out in the session to the 38 Olivier Algieri, perhaps pushing over the limit a little, but running very fast over the course of proceedings. Luke Watts, still the fastest driver by almost 1/4 of a second, 0.22 in front of Jessica Edgar. When the chips are down, Luke Watts really knows how to deliver, as Edgar equals that time to the 100th of a second. Absolutely amazing, 48.55 apiece, and Edgar's second fastest lap is slightly quicker than Watts, hence why she's now looking at pole position.
Yeah, that was a great final sector by Jessica Edgar, and that's what you need to string it all together. I think for the drivers that are crossing the line now, it will be their final lap before the checkered flag goes out. But I think a couple of drivers will get one more.
Yeah, I think Edgar and Watts are both likely to get an additional lap, and with the circuit being as changeable and as fluctuating as it is, that could be to their benefit. Theo Makuris getting a fastest first sector of anyone currently out there, except for Bart Harrison, who's driving with the red mist, having gone off. He's felt, right, I'm not going to mess up like that again. I'm going to get pole position, and he's pushing hard. Fastest second sector of all now from Luke Watts. And he's got one more lap to do. He gets the pole, 48.33 in front of Jess Edgar. And now the checkered flag will come out. And for Alfie Baxter-Davies, there's nothing more he can do. And Gabriel Stilp comes through to finish in 6th place in front of Aidan Line, who slips to 7th in the end, in front of Evan Brown and Alfie Baxter-Davies. Ian Aguilera crosses the line, so only, Olivier Algeri is all the way down in 11th place. Not a great session for him in the end, and Ashton Parsons in 12th, so only the top 5 can keep going. A miserable first sector for Jessica Edgar, but the fastest of all for Luke Watts on this final time lap.
Yeah, it looks like Luke Watts might be able to get even further in front if he gets a decent sector. No, it's a couple of tenths off. But Harrison does improve though, but it is slower than Luke Watts' second sector. Luke still might be able to pull this one out of the bag. Will he be able to improve his passes the line? And yes, he has.
48.24. Pearson goes second. Makuris goes second now by 100th of a second. Very close to the end there as Luke Watts gets the job done from Theo Makuris, Edward Pearson, Bart Harrison and Jessica Edgar caught out there by the mistake she made through oblivion in the final time lap. And then it is Stilp, Line, Brown, Baxter-Davies, Aguilera, Algeri and Parsons with no time for Oliver Greenall. But Luke Watts bags the pole. Really exciting stuff at the end there.
1/100th of a second between Theo Makuris and Luke Watts. That's absolutely nothing. And I think we will see a great battle throughout those two today.
Certainly looks like it's going to be a good one. Thank you once again, Kai Bachini. The time qualifying sessions come to an end here at Whilton Mill, and of course for the season as well. The race action will continue into the heats. Social media content on the British Kart Championships Instagram and Facebook pages and stories to come for you until the finals, when we will declare some champions in the British Kart Championship paddock. I'm Jake Sanson. See you a little bit later on today.
Hi, I'm Tom Ingham and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Jacques Villeneuve. You're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Bruno Senna. You're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Chris Hoy, and you're listening to Downforce Radio.
Hi, I'm Landon Norris, and you're listening to Downforce Radio.